While watching The Unholy Trinity, directed by Richard Gray and captured by director of photography Thomas Scott Stanton, I noticed a recurring approach. The frame is established around the landscape and the architecture, then the actors' action and light are composed within it. In this video, I'll show you how to frame the uncontrollable, then compose the controllable, giving you a clear, repeatable process for creating intentional, story-driven images in any location. Let's dive right in. In The Unholy Trinity, starring Pierce Brosnan, Samuel L. Jackson, Brendan Lessard, and Veronica Ferris, the landscape establishes the frame while the characters and action completes the composition. Ferris actually describes Montana as a leading player in the movie. Before we start looking into the process and looking at some specific shots, we need to understand the difference between framing and composition. And I know sometimes we use this word interchangeably, but they have very different functions. And framing a shot is establishing the actual boundaries of the image, what goes in the image. Composition is where we place different elements within that frame. So for example, if it's our intent to capture this mountain range, then the first thing we're going to do is position the camera in order to frame this mountain. And so we're going to place the camera in order for us to establish the boundaries of that image. And then we're going to compose this shot by taking our subject and place it where we want it. How far are they from the camera? Where do they go? What path do they take? All of that is composition operating within this frame. The idea here is to identify what is important in this space that you want to feature in your shot and frame that first, and then place the other elements around that particular framing. I wanted us to take a look at this shot that I took a few years ago. This area had developed significant amount of mountain biking trails, and they wanted to encourage people to enjoy the trail. This is in Sedona, Arizona. It's just really, really beautiful. And so I wanted to frame this mountain. So this is my uncontrollable. I'm going to frame this mountain. And so I'm going to start kind of in reverse of saying, this is my end shot. This is what I want to take my viewers to, is to show them this beautiful background. So I start by building this frame, and then I can move backwards and say, okay, so now how am I going to compose this shot? And I know I wanted to stay low. I know I wanted to use the trees to kind of block the mountain, to use that as a reveal. And we'll have the mountain bikers come this way, close to the camera, as I move towards the mountain. And what I wanted to do here was to make the bikes as important, as glorious as possible, if that's the right word. And so by staying low and letting the camera and the bikes come close together, then I fill the space with the mountain bike, especially that second one here, where as we're getting closer, look how much space that bike takes, and it just, again, communicate what we're trying to communicate, which is this lifestyle. And then as the bike goes by, you reveal the uncontrollable, the initial frame that you had. This principle doesn't only apply to outdoors and landscape. We're going to take a look at this sequence where one of the main characters arrive at this outpost. But before I dive into some of those framing and those composition, it's important to understand that they actually shot this not on soundstage. They built an entire small town, and everything worked as practicals. So there is no moving walls where it would make room for anything. It's actually 4 walls. They built homes and cabins and shot inside of them. And it was important for the filmmakers and the DP to also create a look that was like motivated lighting that looked natural. And so you will see that windows play a big role into almost every shot, because they want us to believe that that light is actually coming from those windows. And so when we look at this sequence, he's first walking in, he's going to take a seat at this table, and we're going to have our first important frame, and it's this one. So now with this movement, they've established the first frame. Those two actors are going to interact at the table, and this is one of the main frames. So again, it was obvious to me when I saw those scenes that the first thing they did was position the camera so that they would have the window here, they would have the door open on this side, and then they would be able to place the subject where they wanted it, and then the urn here that plays an important role into the story as well. And so they established that frame, composed this shot, and then we can now go to the next frame. So Samuel L. Jackson is going to come over, he's going to take a seat, and that's going to be our second frame here, right there. Okay, and so now again, it's something where they were able to place the camera first and then build around that to make sure that he was sitting right in between those two windows, that we still had the bar back there with some action going on throughout the scene. What's interesting and why I say this is how they work first is, for me, this shot is telling. I've never been into any restaurant or bar where you first walk in and the first thing that happened is you run into a table. And so to me, it was very obvious that that table was placed at that particular position because of the other two frames that we just looked at. If the goal was those two frames, then it ended up needing that table to be in this location. Now we can see the lighting on Samuel L. Jackson, we understand makes sense because of that first initial frame. Because we see that the door is left open, it tells us, yep, he's receiving light. It makes total sense. I buy that light. I understand it. Now, if you've seen any of my videos in the past, you've probably seen this sequence before. I've used it on multiple different videos to talk about different principles. This is the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Las Vegas, and I needed to create this video. And this little sequence is a young couple arriving at the casino and going into the lobby to then go enjoy their suite. The idea here was to really show the lobby area, this lobby. And so again, working kind of backwards, I knew that this was the frame that I wanted. And then I was able to then compose the shot with my two actors by saying, I'm going to have you guys come from both sides of the car. We can't really see it because we took it a little later as far as the final shot, but they're both going to walk from each side of the camera, meet in the middle, hold hands, and keep walking straight. And again, I wish I had more control, because this is where we could have added a lot of elements, like these people back here. We could have had them walk through between those columns, get out on that side. We could have added some actions over here, and most importantly, I could have gotten rid of this guy. And then the last job that I did, which is where I realized this pattern that I just done the day before I watched the film, was this particular shot where we had this beautiful lobby, this beautiful staircase, and originally my crew had already moved a chair into position, and it was actually I was struggling with it because I just couldn't find it. I couldn't find the shot, and I said, no, move the chair away. I first need to frame the space. Instead of trying to move my camera around where they had placed the chair in order to make things work, I needed to get the chair out of the way, frame the staircase the way I wanted to frame it. Then we could position the chair and the subject in the frame. We had to adjust the art piece and move it to the side in order to make sure it didn't, stick behind them or was hidden by the subject, in order for us to achieve the final composition. And I thought this was a great example because, I didn't spend a lot of time. I saw it really rather quickly, but, I was wasting time trying to move the camera around the chair, which I have control over, when in fact, what I needed to do was frame the staircase the way I wanted to, and then move the chair in order to find the right composition for my subject. It was an eye-opener to watch this film and see that that's how they operate as well, and to be able to put it into words of saying, yeah, frame the uncontrollable and compose the controllable. So hopefully This is something, by hearing it, by thinking about how you work, it's something that you could apply. It's something that could help you when you get to a location to be able to identify the elements of the background, of the space that you have that are good, that are supporting your story, that you want to feature, that you want to amplify. Work with those first. Place your camera in a way that showcases those elements that you cannot move, that you want to use to tell your story. And then once your camera is in position, compose the rest of your image to achieve the final look. And if you want to continue building more intentional images, watch my video on using camera angles next to strengthen your cinematography. Thanks for watching and happy filming.